Chapter 2270. When they thought of this, many people had this thought. However, it was only a fleeting thought. After all, they didn't see the man and the woman together. Moreover, the woman didn't have the slightest bit of spirit energy around her, but the man's aura was profound chi. Profound cultivators were the least popular here. Even if they were at the Black Tortoise God level, their combat strength was probably not as good as a nascent soul cultivator. Furthermore, cultivators who had formed an alliance would usually go in and out together. That way, they would be able to look out for each other if anything happened. In the past half a month, the members of the 8 great organizations had been looking for the woman in red and the man with the scar. It was said that these people had already guessed that the two of them were in cahoots. After they had appeared, the two of them had disappeared together. It was obvious that they were hiding somewhere. We plan to go to the beast forest to get some food. Is there anyone who wants to work with us? A devil cultivator asked. Beside him sat another devil cultivator who was at the peak of the fairy realm. Hearing this, the loose cultivators around them fell silent. No one spoke. Those who were familiar with these 2 devil cultivators knew that anyone who went with them would never return. Seeing that no one around them responded, the 2 of them looked at each other and stood up. One of them had a sinister and strange smile on his face. His gaze swept across the crowd and landed on the man in green who was alone on the tree. The 2 of them gestured to each other and walked towards the tree. They shouted at the man in green, "Hey! You're coming with us." When the crowd saw this, they looked at the young man on the tree with confused expressions. Are they going to bring the young man with them? Since they had invited him, the young man would probably not be able to escape. Some of the devil cultivators looked like they were watching a good show. Some of them had bloodthirsty excitement in their eyes. They could imagine what would happen to the man in green. If he agreed to the invitation of the 2 devil cultivators, even if he did not die in the beast forest, he would definitely be killed on the way back. If he did not agree to go with them, he would definitely die here. No matter what he chose, he would not be able to escape death in the end. Fengjiu, who was on the tree, glanced at the 2 people below. His eyes moved slightly as he looked at them and asked, "You want me to go with you to the beast forest?" "That's right," the devil cultivator below replied, his bloodthirsty eyes staring at him on the tree. Hearing this, Fengjiu rubbed his chin and asked, "It's said that there are ferocious beasts everywhere, and even the people from the 8 factions don't dare to approach it?" "Not bad." The demonic cultivators responded once again. One of them had already placed his hand on the long sword at his waist. It was as if he would kill the young man if he refused. "So you're saying that all the meat is in there?" Her eyes lit up and excitement and anticipation appeared on her handsome face. "Not bad," the demonic cultivator said good-naturedly. Staring at the young man's excited expression, he sneered in his heart. Even if all the meat was inside, the premise was that they had to have a way to kill the beasts. The beasts inside were all ferocious beasts. Even with their cultivation, it was difficult to kill a single one of them. Chapter 2271. Hearing the young man's straightforward response, the surrounding crowd was astonished for a moment. This was clearly a trap, and there was actually an idiot who would jump into it. Was there something wrong with this man's brain? I haven't eaten meat for a long time, and I'm craving it. Let's go. Since we're going, let's not waste time. Fengjiu said with a relaxed expression, and there was no fear on his face. The 2 demonic cultivators were also stunned for a moment, and looked suspiciously at the young man in front of them before finally saying, "Then let's go. Follow us." As they spoke, they flew on their swords and headed towards the direction of the fearsome beast forest. Seeing this, Fengjiu also flew on his sword and followed. After the 3 of them left, some of the cultivators began to discuss. "Pfft. I wonder where this stupid kid came from, and he actually dares to follow those 2 to the fearsome beast forest. He's courting death. He's probably starving. Look at that kid, he doesn't have much meat on him. He probably hasn't smelled the aroma of meat for a long time. Not to mention that kid hasn't smelled the aroma of meat for a long time. I haven't eaten meat for 2 to 3 months. During this time, I've been picking some wild fruits in the forest to satisfy my hunger. Unfortunately, there are fewer and fewer places where we can find food. The people from the 8 peaks are too ruthless. Not only do they occupy the mountains, but they also snatch things and territory from us. They're trying to force us to our deaths. You want to eat meat? It's not like there isn't any. If you join any of the 8 peaks, you'll naturally be able to eat and drink well with them. Eat and drink well. Ha ha ha, don't make me laugh to death. Even the people from the 8 peaks eat meat separately. Don't you know? I heard last time that the people from the 8 peaks eat meat according to their strength. Even if you acknowledge them as your master, don't think that you'll be treated fairly. Hearing this, the people who were discussing fell silent. If it was before they were brought here, would they ever have to worry about food? Would they have to risk their lives to hunt beasts in the fearsome beast forest for a meal like now? With their strength, if they were in the outside world, they would be respected and looked up to wherever they went. However, today was different from the past. Everything was different now. On the other side, Fingio followed the 2 devil cultivators towards the beast forest. He flew on his sword and followed behind them at a leisurely pace. Looking at the 2 people in front of her, she asked, didn't the people from the 8 mountain peaks occupy the beast forest? How could he not want such a place? Ha! Occupy. If they want to take it, they have to see if they have the ability to do so. A devil cultivator turned around and glanced at Fingio. What kind of place do you think the vicious beast forest is? In here, the vicious beasts forest is also known as the land of death. However, not many people can enter it. Even if some people can enter it, no one is lucky enough to come out alive. Fingio smiled. Oh. Since that's the case, you still dare to bring me to that place. The vicious beasts forest is isolated by a formation and boundary set up by the 4 great immortal emperors. Ordinary people can't enter it. Even if they do, they'll get lost in there and won't be able to come out. However, coincidentally, we know of a place that can lead to that place. Perhaps they felt that this young man would end up dead in the end. Hence, they did not hold back when they spoke. They even told Fingio about the secret passage that they knew. Chapter 2272. 2 days later, in the evening, we're here. This is the beast forest. The 2 devil cultivators in front stopped and turned around to look at Fingio. You haven't been here before, have you? No, this is my first time here. Fingio said truthfully. While looking in front, he asked, there are barriers and arrays here, how do we get in? This way. The 2 cultivators led the way. After taking a detour, they came to a corner and lifted the surrounding weeds. One of them went in first. The other person said to Fingio, you go down first. Seeing the 2 of them sandwiching her in the middle, she knew that they were just preventing her from running away. Thus, she followed the person in front and went in. When she stepped in, she felt that there were steps under her feet. However, it was pitch black inside and she could not see any light. She could only walk down step by step. This is an underground tunnel. It shouldn't be you who dug it, right? This kind of place should be a tunnel dug by an earth attribute cultivator using his own attribute. These 2 devil cultivators were not of the earth attribute. She guessed that it was not them who dug the tunnel. She just did not expect that the cultivator who dug the tunnel would think of this. The road above was covered with barriers and arrays. If he could not pass through, he would think of a way from underground. Unfortunately, this method could only be used here. If he wanted to break through the array and barrier of this place, he could not rely on digging a tunnel. This was because the outside of this floating place was surrounded by a powerful barrier. Moreover, it was a barrier set up by the 5 great immortal emperors. Even if he dug underground, he would not be able to break through this barrier. After walking in the darkness for a long time, she gradually saw a faint light in front of her. She quickened her pace and followed the devil cultivator in front of her out of the tunnel. However, the forest was terrifyingly quiet. Faintly, she could only hear 1 or 2 ferocious beast roars in the forest, but she could not tell the direction. What level are the ferocious beasts in here? Why haven't I seen a single vicious beast? Fengjiu asked as he looked at the 2 devil cultivator. There are all kinds of fierce beasts here. As far as I know, there are even ancient fierce beasts here. However, it's best if we don't encounter those ancient fierce beasts. Otherwise, no one will be able to survive. A devil cultivator said as he took out something from his spatial ring to lure his prey. Fengjiu saw that they were busy there, and they were using the method of trapping instead of killing. Thus, she glanced at the 2 of them and said, "Why go through so much trouble? Since you want to lure that ferocious beast over, can't you just roar twice?" The moment her voice fell, she raised her profound energy aura and suddenly opened her mouth to shout. "Ah!" The loud voice suddenly rang out, giving the 2 devil cultivators a fright. Their faces turned ashen as they stared at Fengjiu with gloomy faces. "What are you doing? Didn't he know that this would attract a lot of ferocious beasts? Are you trying to get us killed?" Fengjiu shrugged her shoulders innocently and said, "Of course not. I only wanted to lure some ferocious beasts over. Wouldn't it be more convenient for us to kill them this way?" Just as she said that, she suddenly felt that the aura in the air seemed to have changed. Moreover, the ground also started to tremble slightly, as if a large number of ferocious beasts were rushing over here. Chapter 2273. Fengjiu's eyes also moved slightly as he paid attention to the movements around him. Suddenly, he felt a fierce aura pouncing towards him. Fengjiu quickly turned around, and at the same time, he leaped into the air with the tip of his foot, jumping onto a tree at the side. Roar! The ferocious beast's roar was accompanied by a powerful pressure. The bloodthirsty aura and ferocious aura caused the air to slightly change. From the tree, she could only see that the beast that pounced out was a golden tattooed leopard. Its entire body was filled with a bloodthirsty and ferocious aura. Furthermore, it was a ferocious beast that had already reached the peak of the 9th rank. The golden tattooed leopard pounced towards one of the devil cultivators at an extremely fast speed. It let out a low roar and slightly opened its mouth to reveal its sharp teeth. All of them were emitting a bloodthirsty and ferocious aura. The devil cultivator quickly dodged, but the golden tattooed leopard quickly pounced again. Behind it, another group of ferocious beasts rushed over. These beasts were not as strong as the golden tattooed leopard, but their entire bodies were filled with the smell of blood, and their ferocious aura was very obvious. The group of ferocious beasts rushed forward and quickly surrounded the 2 cultivators. They revealed their sharp claws and revealed their sharp teeth as they tore at them. Ah! The 2 devil cultivators did not expect to be surrounded by such a group of ferocious beasts not long after entering this place. They only felt the intense pain of being bitten, causing them to involuntarily raise their heads and cry out. It was also when they raised their heads that the 2 of them saw Fengjiu watching from the tree. The group of ferocious beasts below actually did not attack him, but only attacked the 2 of them. They anxiously and angrily shouted at him, "What are you still doing up there? Come down and help." Fengjiu stood on top of the tree with one hand holding a branch, watching the 2 cultivators being bitten by the ferocious beasts. She felt around in her sleeves, took out a fruit, and took a bite, saying, "It's so dangerous down there, I'd be an idiot to go down." She ate the fruit leisurely and looked at the 2 people whose clothes were torn by the ferocious beasts. Her eyes moved slightly. She has the coercion of an ancient divine beast within her body. As long as she releases a strand of that coercion, the ferocious beasts below would not dare to approach her. Otherwise, why would they only attack those two and not her? It was said that humans knew how to weigh the situation, but they didn't know that beasts also knew how to survive. Perhaps because of the ancient pressure emanating from Fengzhou's body, the two demonic cultivators felt the existence of the pressure and their hearts shook. They looked at Fengzhou in disbelief and exclaimed, Why do you have an ancient aura? Who are you? Hearing this, Fengzhou chuckled as he chewed on his fruit. He stared deeply at the two devil cultivators below. With the strength of these two people, as long as she released her pressure, it was impossible for them not to sense it. She dared to do so because she knew that these two would not be able to return alive. Let's talk about it when you can survive, she said from the tree as she watched the two people being knocked down. Then, the leopard opened its mouth and bit off their necks. Then, it bit towards the dantian of the two demonic cultivators. Blood splashed out, and the sound of bones breaking could be heard. Not long after, the two demonic cultivators died. Their bodies were torn into pieces by the group of ferocious beasts and scattered on the ground. Chapter 2274. That leopard had retreated after the two demonic cultivators had died, and it let out a low growl as it stared at Fengzhou on the tree with its bloodthirsty eyes filled with fear and hesitation. Fengzhou stared at that leopard and scoffed, "What are you staring at me for? Don't tell me you want to fight with me." She smiled playfully and looked at that leopard below. "If you don't leave, I'm going to use you as a practice partner." As though it understood her words, that leopard let out a low growl and retreated step by step. Following that, it leapt into the weeds and disappeared from Fengzhou's line of sight in a blink of an eye. She looked at that herd of ferocious beasts below and curled her lips in disdain. Not to mention that the meat of these ferocious beasts was too tough, just based on the scene of them tearing apart those two demonic cultivators. She couldn't bear to eat this herd of ferocious beasts. Although there were ancient ferocious beasts here, but based on her current ability, if she were to meet an ancient ferocious beast, she would only be unlucky. Looks like she'd better hunt a few more ferocious beasts and roast their meat before leaving. She'd wait till her spiritual energy seal was broken before she came back to explore this beast forest. After making up her mind, she threw the core of the fruit down and with a tap of her foot, she swept past those ferocious beasts below and headed into the depths of the forest. As the night deepened, the howls of the ferocious beasts in the beast forest started to ring out. Faintly, she could even hear the howls of wolves. And in this forest, Fengzhou was roasting meat, and the rich aroma of the meat spread throughout the forest along with the night. She took out a small knife and cut off a piece of roasted meat to eat. Suddenly, she heard the sound of a bell around her waist and the surrounding air turned cold. Seeing this, her brows moved slightly and she swept a glance at her surroundings. She couldn't see anything in the pitch-black surroundings, but the feeling of being stared at was extremely clear. Seeing this, she ate the roasted meat in her hands in a few bites, then put the roasted pig on the rack over the fire into her space. She wiped her mouth and hands, and a voice that contained the aura of profound energy also came out. "If you continue to follow me, I will take all of you in." Her voice was clear, cold, and sharp. Her voice contained the aura of profound energy as well as the might of an ancient divine beast. Almost at the same time her voice was heard, the bell on her waist that was ringing became silent for a moment before it started ringing again. "You don't believe me." She curled her lips and took out the accessory on her waist. Holding the small gourd in her hand, she secretly injected her profound energy into her palm and the small gourd instantly grew bigger in her hand. She opened the mouth of the gourd and threw the gourd in her hand above her head. The gourd emitted a ray of profound energy light, and as the light spread out, the surrounding airflow was also driven, as if it was being absorbed by the gourd. Fengzhou looked at the gourd, a dim light flashing in his eyes. It was also her first time using this. She didn't know if the effects were as good as what her sister had said. Whoosh! That gourd started to spin and sucked in the surrounding air. In an instant, she saw the surrounding leaves rustling, as if something was being sucked into the gourd. Following that, there were waves of sharp and mournful screams and cries of alarm. Those screams were sharp and eerie, bringing along a bone-chilling chill that rang out in the forest, causing her to involuntarily narrow her eyes. Chapter 2275. When she sensed that the eerie cold air around her had disappeared along with the shadows, she moved her palm and yelled, "Keep!" The gourd in mid-air returned to her hand. When she saw that the bell hanging on the gourd had stopped ringing, she curled her lips into a smile. It was indeed a good treasure. She shrank the gourd and hung it on her waist. Then, she sat by the fire and leaned against the tree to rest. Apart from the previous scene, the night was rather peaceful. Perhaps it was because no cultivators came here, and some of the ferocious beasts in the forest did not dare to come near Fingzhou. Therefore, she did not encounter any danger here. When the sky gradually brightened, she extinguished the fire and was about to leave when she heard the faint sounds of battle. "There's someone here." She was slightly surprised. She tapped the ground with the tip of her foot and flew toward the sound. When she was about 500 meters away, she saw the scene in front of her. It was a group of 7 or 8 people. They looked like rogue cultivators. These people's strength was between the beginner and intermediate stages of the celestial sage realm. Their clothes were tattered and their bodies were covered in wounds. At this moment, they were being attacked by a group of ferocious beasts and the golden leopard that she had seen before. Logically speaking, with these people's strength, it should not be a problem for them to deal with these ferocious beasts. However, she noticed that these people's physical strength seemed to be lacking, and their attacks were not strong enough. When she looked again, these people looked like they were in their 40s or 50s. There were even 2 old men in their 60s. Although they were all men, their faces were pale, their bodies were thin, and their steps were weak. It was obvious that these people were suffering from malnutrition. How could a celestial sage realm cultivator be suffering from malnutrition? That was strange. She was slightly surprised. She did not show herself but observed from the dark. Judging from how they worked together to deal with the ferocious beasts, they were different from the other cultivators who only cared about themselves. When she thought of this, her heart skipped a beat. She was just about to recruit them. These people came knocking on her door. These people were not devil cultivators or heretic cultivators. Although their bodies were full of murderous aura, at least they could be used by her. One of the old men was sent flying by a ferocious beast. When he saw the ferocious beast opening its mouth to reveal its sharp teeth, another man in his 40s immediately rushed forward and used his body to push the ferocious beast away. He stood in front of the old man and brandished the saber in his hand at another ferocious beast. With one stab, he took the life of the ferocious beast. Roar! At the same time, the ferocious beast let out a miserable shriek. It struggled to move forward again, but in the end, after taking 2 steps, it fell to the ground. Perhaps the smell of blood from that ferocious beast had stimulated the other ferocious beasts. The attacks from the ferocious beasts became even fiercer. Even the golden leopard roared and bit one of the cultivators. Ah! A cultivator's leg was bitten. Blood gushed out like a fountain, dyeing his clothes red and dripping all over the ground. Chapter 2276. The leopard was clearly shocked and involuntarily took a few steps back. It opened its mouth and stared at Fingzhou warily. It growled as if it was asking, "Why is it you again?" Perhaps because the golden leopard suddenly retreated, the other beasts that were attacking the cultivators also retreated and looked warily at the figure standing on the tree branch. They recognized the green-robed man. They had just met him yesterday. This human had the aura of an ancient divine beast that they were afraid of. It was also because of this that they did not dare to touch him. So, why did they meet him again? Due to the sudden retreat of the ferocious beasts, the cultivators finally had a chance to catch their breath. They supported each other and retreated a few steps, vigilantly staring at the ferocious beasts in front of them while sizing up the azure-robed man who had suddenly appeared. Who was this person? Why did he suddenly appear here? And he was alone. Why would his appearance cause these ferocious beasts to fear him? A series of questions popped up in their minds. However, when they sized up the man in green, they realized that he was only a mystic. Furthermore, he was only a black tortoise god mystic. The combat strength of mystic cultivators was inferior to that of spirit cultivators, but why did this person make these bloodthirsty beasts retreat in fright without saying a word? Who are you, sir? Why did you save us? The old man among them endured the pain of his wounds and supported a cultivator whose thigh had been bitten. He looked at the young man standing on the tree branch and asked. Fengjiu leaped lightly from the tree and landed firmly on the ground. She slowly walked forward and glanced at the heavily injured people. She said, "You guys, if I didn't do anything, you would have died without a doubt." Hearing this, the cultivators looked at each other. The old man asked, "If you have something to say, please say it." "It's very simple. I'm lacking manpower. I saved you, and you have to listen to my orders in the future and treat me as your master. How about it?" Since the other party was direct, she also directly stated her purpose. Hearing this, the cultivators were slightly startled. They didn't immediately agree. Instead, they hesitated and asked, "What do you want us to do?" "Of course it's to kill." She looked at them and said, "Of course, you can also refuse. However, if you refuse, I won't save you. Do you want to live? The choice is in your hands." The few of them were silent for a moment. They glanced at each other as if they were communicating with their eyes. In the end, it was the old man who spoke. "Fine, we agree. As long as you save us, our lives are yours. In the future, we will naturally treat you as our leader and listen to your orders." "Very good." Fengjiu's lips curled into a smile. His expression was filled with confidence as he said, "You've made the right choice. Follow me and you'll have meat to eat." Hearing this, their expressions were complicated. No one knew what they were thinking. At this moment, Fengjiu's gaze swept past them and landed on the golden leopard. "They are my people. Take your beasts and leave. Otherwise, I don't mind killing a few for them as food." When the golden leopard heard this, it let out a low howl. It looked deeply at Fengjiu. In the end, it let out a low growl and quickly turned to leave. As it left, the group of beasts didn't stay and left as well. Chapter 2277. Thank you, Master, for saving our lives. They put away their shock and knelt down on one knee before Fengjiu. Seeing this, Fengjiu was very satisfied and said, "All right, get up. Take care of your wounds." She gestured for them to take care of their wounds first. "Yes." The few of them helped each other to the side and sat down. They tore off the tattered clothes on their bodies and used them as cloth strips to bandage their wounds. Seeing this, Fengjiu frowned. "You don't have medicine." Hearing this, they were stunned and could not react for a moment. "What medicine?" "Medicine to stop bleeding and reduce inflammation. Medicine to treat wounds." "You don't have it." She had a strange expression. These people were powerhouses of the celestial sage level, how could they be in such a state? Hearing this, they smiled bitterly. "Master, even if there was medicine here, it would have been used up long ago. Usually, we would pick some herbs to use, but it's too dangerous here, and herbs are not easy to." Before they could finish speaking, they saw a few bottles of medicine being thrown over and landed in their arms. When they saw it, they could not help but be stunned. "Take it and use it. Clean your wounds and bandage them to prevent inflammation." As Fingzhou spoke, he walked around the area and released his divine sense, paying attention to the surroundings to see if there were any ferocious beasts approaching because of the smell of blood. Holding the bottles of medicine, their hearts were filled with shock. This place was originally a closed-off place. There was nothing here. They lived like savages here. Things like elixirs were too precious for the people here. And their new master actually gave them a few bottles of elixirs? Did he know how precious such medicine was here? Suppressing the shock and horror in their hearts, they quickly treated their wounds, applied medicine, and bandaged them. The two with lighter injuries went to the killed vicious beasts and put away the two vicious beasts. Finally, they handed the leftover medicine to the old man, and the old man took the medicine to Fingzhou. "Master, there's still 1.5 bottles of medicine left." Fingzhou looked back and saw that there was still 1.5 bottles of medicine left. He knew that they were saving it, so he said to the old man, "Keep it." The old man stared blankly for a moment before replying, "Yes, thank you, master." If it was said that the old man had acknowledged him as his master because he hoped that he would save them, at this moment, the old man really did have some gratitude and admiration for this young man. "How did you get in? What if he didn't catch any prey? Why do all of you look like you've been hungry for a long time?" she asked in confusion. Hearing this, the few of them looked dejected and didn't say anything. In the end, the old man said, "Master, we came in through a tunnel. However, due to our lack of stamina and the strength of the ferocious beasts we encountered earlier, we were chased for a few days. It wasn't easy for us to shake them off, but we encountered that group of ferocious beasts just now. That's why. Since that's the case, let's find a place to rest and roast the prey before we leave." "Yes." The few of them replied and followed Fingzhou out of this place that was filled with the smell of blood. When they reached another place, they worked together to roast the two ferocious beasts. However, when they were eating the meat, Fingzhou noticed that these people were obviously very hungry, but each of them only ate a small portion and stopped. Chapter 2278. Hearing this, the few of them fell silent. They looked at each other, not knowing if they should speak. Therefore, their gazes landed on the two old men in the middle of the group, inquiring with their eyes. Seeing this, the two elders were silent for a while. At this moment, one of the elders said, "Master, before we speak, may we ask a few questions?" Hearing this, Fingzhou raised her eyebrows. She took out a wine gourd from the space, opened the lid, and drank a mouthful of wine. Her expression was relaxed and leisurely as she said, "Ask away." The elder looked at Fingzhou and said, "I don't see much of the smell of blood on master, nor is there any murderous aura. You're very different from the people here. May I ask, who are you? Why did you come here?" Hearing this, Fingzhou chuckled softly, "So that's why." She looked at them and said with a smile, "I just came in a while ago. As you can see, I'm not a demonic cultivator, nor a heretic cultivator. I'm also not from any sect. You can consider me a rogue cultivator. When I was fighting with the demon lord subordinate, Shueluo, he opened the door of darkness and sucked me in. That's all." She smiled and drank another mouthful of wine. Then, she looked at them and said, "Now, can you speak?" These people were really cautious. Hearing this, the two elders looked at each other and nodded slightly, saying, "Master, actually, we came here because of our enemies. We're a reclusive family. When we were sucked in, other than ourselves, our wives and children were also here. Therefore, other than supporting ourselves here, we also have to support our wives and children and protect them." Fingzhou looked at them in surprise. "You're from a reclusive family. And your wives and children are also here?" She was slightly surprised. She did not expect this. According to what she knew, most of the people here were evil people and demonic cultivators. Children were even rarer. However, if they were really from a reclusive family, it was normal for them to have wives and children. Yes, other than our wives and children, there are also some clansmen. The elder said. She put away the wine gourd in her hand and asked, how many people are there in total? Have you been discovered by anyone else? With their strength, it wouldn't be a problem for them to survive. However, if they brought their wives and children with them, then if they were discovered by other devil cultivators or cultivators with evil intentions, it would be difficult for them to survive. Including us, there's a total of 39 people. Fengjiu rubbed his chin and said, 39 people. That person has a lot of them. 2 vicious beasts won't be enough to share. After thinking for a while, she stood up and said, since that's the case, I'll bring you guys to hunt some more prey. Otherwise, it'll be troublesome for me to come here every few days. The few of them were slightly startled. They looked at each other and replied, all right. After they ate some meat, their physical strength gradually recovered. As long as their physical strength recovered, their combat strength would also recover, and they would be able to fight those fierce beasts. She glanced at them and said, then the 2 of you with lighter injuries will follow me. The rest can rest here and wait for us to come back. Master, let's go together. The old man said, worried that the 3 of them couldn't handle it. Chapter 2279. You can only walk out of this barrier from the inside. You can't enter from the outside. As long as you stay inside, you won't be in any danger, Fengjiu said to the few of them. After giving them some instructions, he led the 2 of them away. Second uncle, who do you think he is? Seeing them leave, a middle-aged man inside the barrier could not help but ask. No matter who he is, since you've acknowledged him as your master, don't be disloyal. As the old man spoke, he glanced at the few of them and said, he saved us and even gave us medicine to use. Now, he's going to hunt fearsome beasts for us. Just based on these points alone, we owe him a great debt of gratitude. Yes, we know. The few of them replied. They knew this in their hearts, but even so, they were still curious about this mysterious new master. On the other side, the 2 men who followed Fengjiu into the forest looked at the figure in front of them with confusion in their eyes. Hence, one of them asked, Master, we encountered fearsome beasts just now. Why didn't you let us hunt them? Hearing this, Fengjiu turned around and smiled, the meat of those fearsome beasts is too tough and not delicious. I'll bring you to hunt wild boars and the like. The 2 of them were slightly startled, but did not say anything else. They just quietly followed behind him. When they came to a place, Fengjiu stopped in his tracks and gestured to the 2 behind him. The 2 of them looked ahead and saw a group of level 3 fearsome beasts, black-skinned wild boars, walking in the forest ahead. The moment they saw the group of level 3 fearsome beasts, they immediately pressed the weapons at their waists and prepared to attack. Seeing their movements, Fengjiu glanced back at them and raised his eyebrows slightly, asking, What are you doing? The 2 of them were stunned, hunting fearsome beasts. Fengjiu smiled, Why do we need to attack? Just watch me. The 2 of them watched as he took out something and lit it upwind. Spirals of green smoke filled the forest. Those prey that were targeted by Fengjiu were completely unaware and continued to walk forward. Some were walking in the forest, while others were lying on the ground and sleeping. After about the time it takes for an incense stick to burn, the beasts that were moving suddenly fell down one by one. Their bodies were powerless as they lay on the ground. The beasts that were originally lying on the ground howled uneasily. Seeing this scene, the 2 men were somewhat stunned. In order to hunt wild beasts, they were covered in wounds. This time, they came out with their newly recognized master, but the beasts fell one by one without any effort. What are you waiting for? Hurry up and deal with these vicious beasts and store them in the space. Fengjiu shouted at the 2 of them. The 2 of them quickly regained their senses and replied in surprise, Yes. Then he quickly ran forward, killed those vicious beasts, dug out their beast crystals, and put them all into the space. Master, it's all done. These are the beast crystals we dug out from the bodies of the ferocious beasts. The two men looked at Feng Jiu with excitement and admiration. At the same time, they handed over the beast crystals they dug out. At this moment, they admired and respected him from the bottom of their hearts. With this kind of ability, he was more than qualified to be their master. These things should be enough for your people to eat for a while, right? Feng Jiu asked. The two of them nodded, their faces filled with unconcealable joy. It's enough, it's enough. Chapter 2280. Master, what was that thing you ordered just now? How could it even take down a third-level ferocious beast? As the two men walked, they looked at Feng Jiu and asked excitedly. Seeing the two burly men unable to hide their excitement, Feng Jiu couldn't help but laugh. So, there's meat to eat if you follow me, right? In the future, you can eat big chunks of meat, don't worry about not having meat to eat. Hearing this, the two men grinned. At this moment, the two men were so happy, so happy. This way, their clansmen wouldn't have to go hungry anymore. When they returned, if the chief and the rest knew that they had hunted so many third-level black-skinned boars in such a short time, they would definitely be shocked. Just as the three of them were heading back, on the other side, at the boundary, a seventh-level unicorn was ramming against the boundary, attempting to pounce in and bite out the people inside. The few people inside the boundary sat close to each other, facing the outside in a defensive posture. They held weapons in their hands. In case the boundary was broken, they could immediately enter battle mode. Roar! A beast roar was heard. That seventh-level unicorn dug its hind legs into the ground and used all its strength to ram forward. When the boundary was hit, a profound energy aura rippled outwards. The few people inside the boundary couldn't help but feel their hearts in their mouths. Although their strength wasn't bad, they were all heavily injured at this moment. Moreover, their physical strength couldn't be recovered in this short period of time. If they really had to fight with this seventh-level unicorn again, they were afraid that it would really be a fierce battle. However, just as they were all on guard, they saw the seventh-level unicorn suddenly turn its head. It looked around and exhaled 2 breaths from its nose, looking somewhat uneasy. Seeing this, the few of them were slightly surprised. This seventh-level unicorn seems to be. Before they could finish, they saw 3 people walking over from not far away. They're back. The few of them exclaimed in surprise. Seeing the 3 of them return, they were just about to warn them to be careful of the 7th-level unicorn when they saw their master leap onto a tree. The 2 clansmen on his left and right surrounded the 7th-level unicorn, one in front and one behind. You guys go ahead and practice. With your strength, taking down this 7th-level unicorn shouldn't be a problem. As Feng Jiu spoke, he sat leisurely on the tree and sipped his wine, glancing sideways at the Class 7 ferocious beast below. The 2 of them responded and unsheathed their weapons, instantly attacking the Type 7 unicorn. Perhaps it was because they had eaten something, their physical strength was gradually recovering. At this time, the 2 of them exerted their immortal sage combat strength. Even though they were only at the early stage of the immortal sage realm, they still managed to kill the 7th-order savage beast in less than half an hour. Bang! Roar! With a loud thud, the Type 7 unicorn beast slammed into the ground, and a powerful sword chi slashed down, decapitating the Type 7 unicorn beast. Seeing this, Feng He was quite satisfied. With a wave of her hand, she removed the protective shield and asked, "Have you all rested well?" Master, the few of them supported each other as they walked out and bowed to Feng Jiu. We can leave at any time. After resting for a while and eating vicious beast meat, the spirit energy in his body had been replenished. His physical strength had gradually recovered, so it wasn't a problem for him to leave. Chapter 2281. Let's go. Once we're back, you should recuperate from your injuries. She leapt down from the tree and said, "Lead the way." Yes, master, this way. One of them said as he led the way. The other returned to their group, unable to hide the excitement on his face. Seeing this, the two elders lowered their voices and asked, "You've returned so quickly, did you manage to hunt anything?" They had only left for a short period of time, yet they had returned so quickly. Did they manage to hunt anything? Clan leader, third elder, we did. Master brought us to hunt a third-level black-skinned boar. He said that the meat of a third-level black-skinned boar is more tender. The man grinned and looked at the figure walking leisurely in front of him. He said to them, "You don't know, but Master is really powerful. He didn't even have to lift a finger and he helped us hunt down 19 black-skinned boars." Hearing this, the few of them were slightly surprised but also curious. What happened? Tell us in detail. It's like this. The man explained the whole story to them in detail. The more he spoke, the more excited he became. In the future, we won't have to worry about our people running out of food. Master's medicine is too powerful, we don't even have to lift a finger. However, hearing this, some people were delighted while others frowned. When the two old men and the two middle-aged men heard this, they thought even more. Now that they were using medicine to hunt ferocious beasts, what if they ran out of medicine? Although their powers were at the immortal sage level, there were still some ferocious beasts in the beast forest that they could not handle. If they used medicine, it would not be a long-term solution. Fengjiu did not know that the people behind her were worried about this matter. She followed them out of the beast forest and saw that they were also using the secret underground passage. It was just that it was different from the one she had used to enter the forest. After leaving the beast forest, she followed them on their flying swords. Along the way, they stopped to rest. After about 3 days, they finally arrived at their hiding place. "Master, it's here," the elder said as he pointed to a place in front of them. Fengjiu looked in front and raised her eyebrows. "There's not even a single person here, much less a place to hide. Are you sure that your people are all here?" He, master, this is indeed a good place. However, our hiding place is not above, but in an underground cave." The old man stroked his beard and smiled. He said to Fengjiu, "There is a formation here. Master, please follow us." As he spoke, he led the way. After Fengjiu followed them into the array, he could clearly feel 2 divine senses probing him. He heard the old man in front of him say something, and the 2 divine senses retracted. At the same time, their auras were revealed. "Patriarch, you're finally back." Excited voices mixed with joy rang out. 2 figures quickly ran out. Fengjiu looked and was surprised. It turned out to be a wall made of sand. Behind the wall was a tunnel that led underground. Was there someone with the earth attribute among them? So he didn't live on the surface, but in an underground cave. Her eyes flickered slightly as she found it very interesting. Since he could think of living in an underground cave, it was no wonder that he could survive here with his wife and children. Chapter 2282. Don't be presumptuous. The old man reprimanded. When the 2 saw this, they couldn't help but lower their heads. The old man turned to Fengjiu and said, "Master, please don't be offended. They don't know yet." Fengjiu responded. She couldn't help but feel amused when she saw the 2 men raise their heads in disbelief and look at her in shock because of the old man's call of "Master." "How are the people in the clan during our absence?" the old man asked the 2 of them. One of the men quickly said, "Patriarch, nothing happened during this period. A group of devil cultivators passed by here 2 days ago, but they didn't find us. However, a few of the children in the cave are sick. It's been 2 or 3 days and they don't seem to be getting better. Moreover, their condition is getting worse. We can't do anything about it. It's good that you're back. Quickly take a look at the children." Hearing this, their faces all changed, and worry emerged on their faces. "Master, please come in." The old man suppressed his worry and gestured to Fengjiu to enter. Fengjiu nodded and followed them into the underground cave. When they entered, they saw how big the cave was. The caves were connected like a maze. After walking for a distance, they could faintly hear the sound of crying. Little Six, wake up, Little Six." Hearing the sound of crying, they quickened their pace. Not long after, they finally came to a wider cave. The patriarch and the others quickly walked forward while Fengjiu glanced around. This cave was some distance from the surface. Even experts at the peak of the Sage Immortal Realm or Immortal Venerable Realm wouldn't be able to detect the movements and aura underground. It was a good place for them to hide in. However, it was underground after all. The air was humid and it wasn't good for them to live in it for a long time. They turned around and looked forward. Other than some men and women in their 20s and 30s, there were 7 or 8 children. The oldest looked to be about 15 or 16 years old, and the youngest was about 6 or 7 years old. Most of the children were pale and breathless. There was also a 13 or 14-year-old boy lying on the stone bed. He was on the verge of death. "Little Six, I'm afraid Little Six won't be able to hold on for much longer." The old patriarch looked at the dying young man on the stone bed. His eyes reddened and he choked with sobs. Hearing this, the children and youths all began to cry. The adults also shed tears, their faces filled with sorrow. Seeing that they had all ignored her, Fengjiu cleared his throat and said calmly, "I know medicine. Why don't I take a look at him?" As soon as she said this, the crying suddenly stopped, and everyone turned to look at her. "Who is this green-robed man? When did he come in? Why is he here?" Hearing their discussion and seeing their wary gazes, Fengjiu couldn't help but smile and look at the old patriarch. The old clan leader regained his senses and hurriedly said to everyone, "His name is Fengjiu. He saved us in the beast forest, so we have already recognized him as our master. From now on, he will be the master of our ancient clan." Hearing this, everyone was stunned and didn't regain their senses for a long time. Obviously, they found it hard to believe that a new master had suddenly appeared. "Master, you really know medicine?" The old clan leader asked with a trembling voice. "Yes," Fengjiu replied. Chapter 2283. Seeing this, Fengjiu waved her hand and said, "Get up. You're already so old, there's no need to kneel to me so easily." She slowly walked forward and sat beside the bed. She reached out to feel the pulse of the youth on the bed and checked his body. After a while, she said, "This is an illness caused by the dense yin qi in the cave for a long time. In addition, it's caused by malnutrition. As long as he walks outside more often and basks in the sun to replenish his nutrients, he'll be fine." As she spoke, she took out a nutrient solution from her space and said to the woman beside her, "Come and feed this to him." The woman couldn't help but look at the tribe leader. Should she take it? "Take it. Do as master says." The old tribe leader said and gestured for her to take it. "I'll help Little Six." The middle-aged man said and went forward to help the youth on the bed so that the woman could feed him the nutrient solution. Fengjiu looked at the other youths and children and said, "These children's bodies aren't very good. It's all because of the cold qi in their bodies." As she spoke, she took out a bag of spirit rice from her space and handed it to another woman. "Boil this spirit rice into porridge. Call me when it's done. I'll add something to dispel the cold." Okay. The woman was pleasantly surprised. They hadn't eaten anything like spirit rice since they came in. "Isn't there roasted meat? Take some for them to fill their stomachs first." Fengjiu looked at the men and sighed in her heart. With such strength and cultivation, it was really strange that they could mix in like this. Come over here. This time, the prey we hunted were all hunted by master. It's enough for us to eat for a long time." As the men spoke, they took out roasted meat from their space rings and cut it into pieces and handed it to their clansmen. They hadn't smelled the aroma of meat for a long time. Seeing the huge vicious beast roast meat in front of them, the children and youths couldn't help but swallow their saliva. Their eyes lit up, while the adults revealed joyful smiles. This vicious beast meat has a strong spiritual energy. The child's body is weak now, so it's not suitable for him to eat too much. Fengjiu looked at them as she spoke. When she saw the children and youths looking at her eagerly, she said, "Everyone, just eat a small piece first. After you eat the porridge, you can eat the roast meat." "All right." Hearing this, everyone responded happily. The cave was filled with the aroma of meat, and everyone had a satisfied smile on their faces. Seeing them so easily satisfied, Fengjiu had an indescribable feeling in his heart. It was precisely because they were trapped here that these things that were common and ordinary to the people outside were precious to them. For some people, happiness was a full meal, a bowl of spirit porridge, or a piece of roasted meat. The two women who went to cook the congee earlier walked over to Fengjiu and said, "Master, the congee is almost done." Hearing this, Fengjiu followed them to another cave. She saw that there was a big pot there, and the spirit rice inside was already boiling. A thick porridge aroma wafted out. Seeing this, she added some medicinal herbs to expel cold and replenish qi, and added salt. Finally, she said to them, "Scoop some for everyone." "Okay." The two women smiled and began to get busy. Chapter 2284. Can I have another bowl? The child was only 7 or 8 years old, but due to long-term malnutrition, he was much younger than his peers. His pale face was thin and green, with a trace of timidity, but his eyes could not hide his desire. When Fengjiu heard this, her heart could not help but ache. She looked at the child and smiled gently, of course. As soon as she finished speaking, a huge smile appeared on the child's palm-sized face. He immediately ran towards the woman, and, "Master said that I can have another bowl." Looking at this scene, the eyes of the Gu family's lords could not help but redden. They were originally a large hidden family clan, but they never thought that they would one day end up like this. They were trapped here and could only live like savages. They could not eat 3 meals and were as skinny as a match. How could they not feel upset when they saw the few remaining juniors in the clan like this? After everyone had eaten their fill, the old patriarch called a total of 39 people together. Even the young man who had been on the verge of death was helped up. However, after drinking a bottle of nutrient solution, his breathing had recovered a lot, and his spirit was much better. "We almost could not return from this trip. It was Master who saved us, so we made an oath that the Gu family will serve him as our master." As the old clan leader spoke, he looked at the remaining people. Everyone knew that it was this young man who had saved the clan leader and the rest. He had even hunted for them, given them spirit rice and healed their children's bodies. When they heard the clan leader's words, they did not hesitate and immediately knelt respectfully. "We greet Master." Everyone's voices rang out in unison. The voices of men and women were mixed with the voices of children. Although it was a little comical, everyone's expression was respectful and serious. Fengjiu looked at everyone and said, "Rise." "Thank you, Master." They replied and stood up. "Follow me, and I will not treat you unfairly. I only have one request for you, and that is to be loyal." Her voice faintly rang out, and her voice clearly entered everyone's ears. "We swear loyalty to Master. We will never betray him." As the old clan leader spoke, the others all said in unison, "We swear loyalty to Master. We will never betray him." "Very good." She nodded, glanced at them, and said, "After entering this place, you can no longer increase your strength and cultivation. The strength of these children and youths is very weak. Although you can't cultivate to increase your strength, you can't fall behind in martial arts. From today onwards, you have to strengthen your martial arts training. This way, the toughness of your bodies will greatly increase. Also, during this period of time, you all stay here and recuperate. I have to go out and find some cultivators. As she said this, she flipped her hand, and handed them some bottles of medicine. These are some commonly used medicines. You should keep them just in case. I don't think they'll be back anytime soon. Hearing Feng Zhou's words and looking at the medicine he handed over, everyone couldn't help but be stunned. For a moment, they didn't know whether to take it or not. It would be best if the old patriarch stood up and spoke. Chapter 2285. That's right, Master. If we don't go out, we won't get hurt. You should keep them for yourself. Another old man said. Feng Zhou smiled and placed the medicine in the patriarch's hands. I have plenty of these things. Since I told you to keep them, just keep them. Remember, don't go out to hunt during this period of time. Recuperate and wait for me to come back. Seeing this, the clan leader kept the medicine and nodded after a long time. Okay, we'll listen to Master. Master must be careful when you're outside. As he spoke, the clan leader still felt that it was inappropriate and said, Master, how about this? Let Gu Xiang accompany you. This way, if anything happens, he can take care of you. Hearing this, a man at the side stepped forward and said, Master, the clan leader is right. Let me go out with you. We can take care of each other. Hearing this, Feng Zhou thought for a while and said, All right, then let him accompany me. She agreed with a smile. Because she wasn't in a hurry to leave, Feng Zhou stayed here for the time being, and she only left with Gu Xiang after around 2 days. On the way, the two of them walked side by side. Gu Xiang looked at his master who was walking leisurely and could not help but ask, Master, where are we going? Just walking around. As Feng Zhou spoke, she threw out the rainbow glass feather from her waist and jumped onto it. She said to Gu Xiang, Follow me. With that, she flew forward. Seeing this, Gu Xiang followed closely behind. Looking at the 7-colored glazed feather that his master was sitting on, he was slightly surprised. He had heard of this 7-colored glazed feather before, but wasn't this in the lower continent? How could it be in his master's hands? He was puzzled. The longer he followed his master, the more he felt that he was mysterious and unpredictable. The two of them flew in midair. Especially since Feng Zhou was sitting on the rainbow glass feather, the rainbow light was very dazzling. It could be said that the people below could see her in midair from afar. 2 demon cultivators had their eyes on the rainbow glass feather that Feng Zhou was sitting on. Hence, the two of them jumped onto a lush tree and one of them took out a bow and arrow and aimed at Feng Zhou. Swoosh! Suddenly, a sharp sound of an arrow piercing through the air was heard. It shot towards Feng Zhou with a xiao sound. Gu Xiang, who was following behind, saw this and immediately shouted, Master, be careful. He wanted to go forward, but he heard his master's clear voice. Don't come over. Feng Zhou, who was sitting on the rainbow glass feather and who was originally sitting on the rainbow glass feather, at the same time, she said to Gu Xiang, Go down. Yes. Gu Xiang came to his senses and immediately descended from the sky on his sword. He flew into the forest to find out who had attacked them in the forest. After Feng Zhou avoided the arrow in mid-air, it made a turn and shot back towards Feng Zhou. Seeing this scene, Feng Zhou's eyes moved slightly and the corners of her lips curled up. It's actually a magic weapon? She supported herself on the rainbow glass feather with one hand and jumped up. Standing on the rainbow glass feather, she faced the arrow head-on. Seeing that the arrow was about to hit her, she raised both hands and a dark energy aura surged between her hands. Just as the arrow was about to pierce between her eyebrows, she exerted force with both hands and caught the arrow, preventing it from going any further. Chapter 2286. She immediately flipped her hand and removed the spiritual energy on the arrow. Only then did she look down. She saw that the demonic cultivator below saw that she had caught the arrow, so he pulled his bowstring and shot out a second and third arrow. The 2 arrows pierced through the air. Fengjiu flew down and jumped down from the rainbow glass feather to the ground. The 2 arrows also shot towards the ground. She led the 2 arrows to chase after them. When she arrived in front of a large tree, she passed by it. One of the arrows shot into the tree with a whoosh, while the other one was caught by her in a flash from behind to remove the spiritual aura on the arrow blade. She kept the 3 arrow blades in her hand one by one. Seeing that Gu Xiang had already started fighting with the demonic cultivator, she went forward. The 2 devil cultivators were both at the immortal sage realm. Gu Xiang was not a match for them at all. When she saw this, her profound energy aura surged. Her movement technique was as quick as a ghost as she quietly rushed forward. A cold light flashed past, and an arrow flew out from her hand. With a swoosh, it shot into the dantian of one of the devil cultivators with a speed that was too fast to be heard. N. The demonic cultivator groaned, and his eyes widened in disbelief as he looked at her. He staggered backward, and finally fell to the ground. His body twitched for a moment before he died. Seeing that the demonic cultivator had died, the other person was shocked. He looked at Fengjiu in horror, then quickly retreated. With a flip, he prepared to escape into the forest. Seeing that the demonic cultivator had fled, Gu Xiang was about to give chase with her sword when she heard Fengjiu's voice. No need to chase. He looked back and saw that his master had opened her hand. 2 arrows were spinning in her hand, carrying a powerful profound energy aura. With a whoosh, they chased after the demonic cultivator. In the blink of an eye, he saw the 2 sharp arrows pierce through the devil cultivator's body. From afar, he could only see fresh blood splattering out. The devil cultivator fell to the ground, motionless. Seeing this scene, he couldn't help but open his mouth and look at Fengjiu in disbelief. Master. Wasn't he just a black martial god? How could he be so powerful? Although his opponent was a devil cultivator, he was still a celestial sage stage devil cultivator. Why couldn't he dodge those 2 arrows? What are you waiting for? Fengjiu looked at him and said, Go and collect everything that can be used on them. Oh, okay, I'll go right away. Gu Xiang only felt that his head was in a mess. Clan leader had asked him to follow along and protect Master, but looking at Master's strength, he didn't need his protection at all. He took the items from the 2 devil cultivators and handed them to Fengjiu. He grinned and said, Master, these 2 devil cultivators each have a space ring and 2 Qinquan pouches. Other than some magic tools, there's nothing else inside. However, this bow and arrow are very good. It's also an extraordinary treasure. Fengjiu glanced at it and took the bow and arrow. He reached out and wiped off the demonic aura on it, then handed it to him and said, Keep everything. Wear this bow and arrow with you. Gu Xiang was slightly startled as he watched the demonic aura on the bow and arrow being wiped off just like that. He couldn't help but glance at Fengjiu. He wanted to say something, but in the end, he didn't say anything. Chapter 2287. However, when he saw his master wiping it with his hand as if it was effortless, he couldn't help but be startled. Exactly how powerful was his master? The reason why he was able to have his current strength and cultivation was not only because he was heavily groomed by the clan back then and used a lot of medicinal pills, but he also cultivated for several decades. However, the age of their master's bone was not much older than the younger generation in their clan. Yet, at such a young age, he had such a terrifying cultivation. What are you thinking about? Let's go. Fengjiu glanced at Gu Xiang, who was deep in thought. She tapped her toes and jumped onto the rainbow-glazed feather again. Let's go. As long as we wander around, there will naturally be prey that will come to us. Hearing this, Goose Yang's mouth twitched. At this moment, he finally understood why his master didn't use the inconspicuous flying sword but used the dazzling rainbow-glazed feather as a flying device. It turned out that he wanted to lure enemies to him. Of course, if anyone here was greedy, they would definitely come to snatch the rainbow-glazed feather when they saw it. Weren't those two demon cultivators the best examples? In the end, not only did they fail to snatch the treasure, they even lost their lives. Just like that, the two of them flew along the way. On the way, Feng Jiu said to Goose Yang, "Just follow us in the dark. Conceal your aura and don't let anyone discover your existence. Make good use of the bow in your hand." Hearing this, Goose Yang was slightly startled. Then, he replied, "All right. If Master has any orders, just call me and I will show myself." With that, he concealed his aura and changed from being in the open to being in the dark. Feng Jiu probed for a while and nodded to herself. He was indeed worthy of being a member of a reclusive family. Not everyone could hide their aura. Even if she didn't check carefully, she probably wouldn't have been able to sense his existence. It seemed that she had picked up a treasure in this family. Although there were only 39 people left, they would definitely be useful in the future. Along the way, one of them was in the open while the other was in the dark. Some demon cultivators and cultivators appeared one after another, wanting to snatch her Dharma weapon. In the end, they were all killed by the two of them. 3 days later, when Fengjiu returned to the forest with more itinerant cultivators, she kept the rainbow-glazed feather and changed to walking slowly. However, she held a jug of wine in her hand and drank as she walked. She was very satisfied. When the itinerant cultivators who were sitting scattered saw a green figure walking out of the forest with a wine jug in his hand, they couldn't help but be surprised. "It's him. That man in green. Didn't he follow the two demon cultivators to the beast forest? How could he still be alive?" For a moment, everyone's eyes fell on Feng Nine. They saw that there was no trace of blood on his cyan robe, only a little dirty and stained with some dust. However, the young man looked exactly the same as when they had seen him 7 or 8 days ago. And was. They could smell the fragrance of the wine from afar. At this moment, a demon cultivator stared at the wine jug in Fengjiu's hand and stood up. He strode forward and blocked in front of her. His cold voice carried a strong murderous aura and pressure as he asked, "Hey, kid. How did you come back alive? What about the other two?" Chapter 2288. The other two. She leaned against the tree and gently shook the wine gourd in her hand. She narrowed her eyes and her voice carried a hint of indifference, like a cat basking in the afternoon sun. Her entire body was filled with a languid aura. She looked at the demonic cultivator and the corners of her mouth curled into a strange smile. She said unhurriedly, "They're dead." Hearing this, the demonic cultivator's pupils shrank. "You killed them." Fengjiu drank a mouthful of wine and said, "No, they died under the claws of ferocious beasts. I saw them being torn to pieces by a group of ferocious beasts. Not even their bones were left." Hearing this, the surrounding people's breathing stagnated and they couldn't help but look at the man in green. The two demonic cultivators were dead. Then how did he come back alive? According to him, when the two demonic cultivators were surrounded and torn to pieces by a group of ferocious beasts, he was not far away. Thinking of this, the crowd's expressions were different. Pairs of probing eyes fell on the man in green. Hearing this, the demonic cultivator couldn't help but feel a chill in his heart. He inexplicably took a step back. He originally wanted to stir up trouble and deal with this young man, but now he couldn't help but hesitate. He stared at the young man for a long time. He saw that the young man's expression was calm and leisurely. His entire body was filled with a languid aura. He was neither shocked nor afraid, as if he didn't care about the demonic cultivator at all. Seeing this, the demonic cultivator quietly retreated, not daring to attack him. Fengjiu leaned against the tree and stood. Her half-narrowed eyes silently swept across the crowd, taking in their expressions. Her gaze fell on the cultivator she had taken a liking to a few days ago. A cultivator at the celestial sage level, with a murderous aura and a sturdy waist and a strong back. Such a person should be recruited by her. However, she still lacked an opportunity to subdue him. Rather than recruiting them one by one, it would be better to let them find her themselves. With a thought, she sat down cross-legged under the tree and took out a roasted meat leg from her space to eat. Accompanied by wine, she was very satisfied. When the surrounding cultivators smelled the fragrance of the roasted meat, they couldn't help but turn to look at the man in green. When they saw this scene, the corners of their mouths couldn't help but twitch. Was this man doing this on purpose? These people hadn't smelled the aroma of meat for several months, but he had wine and meat and was sitting there eating casually. They couldn't help but swallow their saliva. They tried their best to restrain themselves from looking at him, but the rich aroma of meat permeated the air, causing them to involuntarily take a deep breath. However, the more they smelled the aroma of meat, the more their stomachs, which were originally not that hungry, grumbled uncontrollably. Listening to the rumbling of the stomachs around them, although everyone's faces were tense, there were still many people who looked a little embarrassed. In any case, they were once among the top figures. But now, just a roasted meat leg was enough to make them lose face. In front of so many people, they couldn't swallow their pride and snatch the food. Therefore, the faces of those devil cultivators and heretic cultivators turned gloomy. Pairs of eyes stared directly at Fengjiu, who had a satisfied expression on his face. They all thought at the same time, find a chance to kill this brat. They believed that there must be more food in his space. Chapter 2289. These people didn't want to be bound, so they didn't join the 8 factions. Since that was the case, they probably wouldn't have much of a reaction to her words. She also didn't have much expectations for this. She only said it to let them know that she had such plans. In the future, when she could call upon hundreds of people, these people would naturally remember what she said today. Hearing this, everyone's gazes slightly changed, but they didn't say anything. Some glanced at Fengjiu before lowering their eyes to clean their weapons. Some glanced at Fengjiu with unclear expressions. Some directly stood up and left. Of course, there were also people with expressions of ridicule and ridicule. Could it be that you're thinking that if any of us are willing to join your group, you'll share your roasted meat and wine with us? Hearing this, Fengjiu curled her lips and smiled. People have to rely on themselves. How can relying on others last long? Even if you join my group, if you want my things, you'll have to see if you have the qualifications. She paused, took a sip of wine, and lazily said, I'm only inviting you, and I didn't say that I'm going to use wine and meat to invite you. With your strength and cultivation, I wouldn't dare to ask you to join my team just for this mouthful of wine and meat. Everyone's expression slightly changed. After glancing at Fengjiu, they looked away and didn't say anything else. Fengjiu sat there leisurely eating meat and drinking wine. After a long time, he stood up and stretched before walking into the forest ahead. There were many vagrant cultivators gathered here because there was a water source. Not far ahead, there was a small stream flowing down from the mountains. The water here was sweet and cold. The water here was one of the most important resources for the cultivators to survive. When a few devil cultivators saw the azure-robed man walk towards the water source, they couldn't help but have ideas. 2 of the devil cultivators glanced at each other and also stood up to follow him. Seeing this, another 2 to 3 evil cultivators also stood up and followed behind. Although the others who saw this were also tempted, seeing that there were already 5 people staring at the young man, they didn't follow. In the forest filled with trees and weeds, the distance of about 500 meters had already blocked their line of sight. They couldn't see the figure of the man in green, nor could they see the figures of the people following behind him. However, everyone here released their divine senses at the same time. However, when they released their divine senses in that direction, they were suddenly reflected back by a relatively powerful divine sense. At that moment, everyone was shocked. They withdrew their divine senses and pondered in their hearts. Whose divine sense was that? Does it belong to that heretic? And it was that demonic cultivator's? Among those 5 people, there was actually someone who was hiding such a powerful divine sense. The celestial sage expert who caught Fingzhou's attention was wiping his weapon. He slightly paused and raised his head to look at a certain place in the forest, as if he had noticed something. In front, Fingzhou, who was originally walking towards the stream, walked deeper into the forest when he sensed that the people behind him were following, widening the distance between them. When the people behind saw the figure in front of them walking faster and faster, they couldn't help but snort coldly and quicken their pace to follow. Chapter 2290. Gu Xiang, who was not far behind them, looked at the celestial sage expert who was wiping his weapon. He had also noticed that person's movements just now. According to his master, he had taken a fancy to this person and wanted to recruit him. He had taken a look just now, and this person's vigilance was indeed very strong. Judging from his aura, his combat strength should also be very strong. However, he had been following behind his master all this time. Even now, he still did not know how his master planned to recruit members. At this moment, the air current in front of him caused him to hold his breath. He quietly approached and hid in a large tree. At the same time, he took out the bow and arrow on his back. In front, Fingzhou looked at the 5 cultivators who had surrounded her and smiled. She looked at them and asked, "Are you guys working together?" Seeing that the young man in front of them was not afraid and even had a smile on his face, they frowned. "That's right. After we kill you, we'll split the items equally." Although they said that, it was hard to say whether they would split the items equally in the end. "It's fine. You guys can come at me together. I also want to move my muscles." As Fingzhou spoke, he raised his hand and made a gesture. It was a gesture that indicated to Gu Xiang, who was hiding in the shadows, that he should just watch quietly and not make a move. However, those devil cultivators did not know what Fingzhou meant by that gesture. When they saw him raise his hand, a sword aura instantly shot out towards Fingzhou in front of them. Seeing that the devil cultivator had made a move, the others did not show any signs of weakness. With a turn of their swords, streams of air containing a chilling murderous aura shot out. The cold light of their blades reflected off Fingzhou's dagger and his figure swept out like a ghost. The green figure was instantly enveloped by a wave of mystic aura. The aura of the black tortoise god spread out, causing those devil cultivators to raise their heads and laugh maniacally. "Ha ha 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 ha. You're actually just a mystic cultivator. Looks like you won't be able to escape today." Complacent and arrogant voices mixed with sinister laughter rang out. Among them, there were 2 celestial sage experts. At this moment, when they joined forces, their killing intent spread out. The intertwining sword aura formed a huge net that enveloped the green figure. Just when they thought that the green figure would be cut into pieces by the net of sword aura, the green figure suddenly disappeared in the next moment. "It's too early to laugh now." Fengzhou's cold voice was like an emissary from hell, faintly entering their ears. When one of the devil cultivators heard those words, he felt a chilling murderous aura abruptly from the soles of his feet. And he abruptly turned his head and widened his eyes in horror at the man in green who had appeared behind him at some point in time. He wanted to dodge, but he felt a sharp pain in his throat. Warm blood splashed out in an instant, causing his entire body to stiffen. He opened his mouth in disbelief. Unwillingness and anger surged in his heart. He used all of his cultivation base, and before he could take his last breath, he activated all of his cultivation base in an attempt to drag the young man in front of him down with him to the end of the world. In an instant, the demonic cultivator's body swelled up like a balloon filled with air, and a frighteningly powerful pressure spread out in an instant, covering Fengjiu. His eyes even popped out due to the surging airflow in his body. Chapter 2291. As they cried out in alarm, they could no longer be bothered to deal with Fengjiu as they quickly retreated. Just as the devil cultivator was about to self-destruct, Fengjiu retreated and condensed a profound energy aura in her hands before abruptly striking out. When the devil cultivator flew in the direction of the other devil cultivators, a loud rumble sounded out as well. All of a sudden, a powerful airflow rippled out in the air. The ripple was like a splashing wave in the air. Wherever it passed, the trees and weeds in the forest were destroyed one after another. It was the self-destruction of a celestial sage expert. The power of the explosion was so strong that it was not something an ordinary person could withstand. Even the rogue cultivators who were about 1,000 meters away could hear the loud explosion and feel the powerful airflow rippling out in the air. The sound of trees breaking rang out one after another. The trees that were too large for a person to encircle were cut down by the powerful airflow and fell messily to the ground. The weeds that were half the height of a person were crushed and flattened. The wind and sand swirled and the fallen leaves fluttered. Everything was a blur. The few devil cultivators who had retreated were still lying on the ground, avoiding the powerful airflow in the air. However, at this moment, Fengjiu stood up, and her divine sense locked onto the devil cultivators who were half covered by the wind and fallen leaves. Taking advantage of the moment when they had not recovered from their shock, she made her move. Hiss! Ah! A blood-curdling scream suddenly rang out, filled with disbelief and astonishment. In the air, the smell of blood spread out along with the surging airflow, stimulating the demonic cultivators who were still lying on the ground. Their hearts shook as they fiercely jumped up. You actually launched a sneak attack. They could vaguely see the green figure moving amidst the wind and fallen leaves. However, when they tried to see clearly, they were blinded by the wind and sand. Another groan rang out. They heard the sound of someone falling, as if it was right beside them. The remaining two devil cultivators were overwhelmed with shock and fear. They waved their hands to disperse the airflow. Finally, the wind, sand, and fallen leaves gradually stopped. At this moment, the green figure finally appeared clearly in front of their eyes. However, when they saw the three corpses lying around them, their hearts suddenly shrank. They took a step back in an attempt to escape. Trying to run. Fengjiu approached the two of them step by step. His voice was as cold as a Rakshasa from hell. I usually don't show mercy to those who want to take my life. Today, I'll take your lives. You want to kill us? That depends on whether you have the ability to do so. The two of them gritted their teeth. They knew that they had to fight. Hence, they gripped the sharp swords in their hands and charged forward with all their strength. Clang! Whoosh! Sword chi slashed through Fengjiu's robes. The swift and fierce airflow whistled through the air. The murderous intent from the two of them shot out. Unlike before, the two of them were determined to fight to the death. They knew very well that if they could not kill the person in front of them, they would be the ones to die. Hence, the two of them did not hold back in this battle. They fought with all their might until their eyes turned red. Chapter 2292. However, just as he was watching the scene in fear, he saw that the dagger in his master's hand seemed to have come alive. It was moving freely in his master's hand. The dagger's movements and strange and tricky moves were like fancy moves. It was too much for his eyes to take in. He never knew that there was someone who could wield a dagger so skillfully. It was as though the dagger had become one with him. His swift movements and attacks gradually gained the upper hand over the two evil cultivators. When his master dodged the attacks of the two evil cultivators, the dagger in his hand directly flew out and pierced into the dantian of one of the two evil cultivators. When he saw the dagger piercing into the evil cultivator's body, even though he was still some distance away, he seemed to have heard the cracking sound of the dantian breaking. When he saw the evil cultivator howling unwillingly and falling to the ground, his tensed heart finally relaxed. It seemed that his master would have no problem winning. However, at this moment, his face darkened. He turned around and looked at the two people who were still fighting in front of him. Finally, he flew back in the direction he came from. On the other side, the rogue cultivators wanted to find out what was going on because of the huge commotion in front of them. It was just a young man. Even if the young man was a little strange, with the strength of the 5 people, they shouldn't lose to him, right? Just as they walked forward and got closer, a middle-aged man with a bow and arrow in his hand suddenly appeared on a tree in front of them. "Everyone, it's best that you don't come any closer." Gu Xiang stood on the tree and stared at the crowd below as he said in a deep voice. "Who are you? Why do you want us to stay away?" One of the evil cultivators snorted coldly. It was obvious that he didn't take Gu Xiang seriously. Gu Xiang stared at them and said coldly, "If you come any closer, you'll have to bear the consequences." Since his master didn't want him to attack, he wouldn't attack. However, he couldn't let these people go any closer. Otherwise, it was inevitable that they would want to kill his master. One person wasn't too strong. However, if these people wanted to kill his master and joined forces to attack him, it would be impossible for the two of them to defeat so many people. What's more, who knew if these people would secretly launch a sneak attack while his master was fighting with someone else? He didn't think that the people here wouldn't do such a thing. Among the cultivators, the celestial sage expert glanced at Gu Xiang and then at the front. In the end, he turned around and walked towards the water source. After filling it with water, he left the place and prepared to hunt. However, the others did not leave. Among them, the demonic cultivator who had spoken earlier sneered when he saw that everyone had stopped. He strode forward and swept a provocative glance at Gu Xiang as if to say, "Even if I walk forward, what can you do to me?" Seeing this scene, everyone's expression changed slightly, but in the next moment, they involuntarily took a few steps back. This was because Gu Xiang, who was standing on the tree, had instantly pulled back the bowstring in his hand. The strength of a celestial saint expert was displayed in an instant. The arrow that contained the aura of an expert shot out with a swoosh. Its speed was so fast that it was not something that the devil cultivator of the fairy realm could dodge. Swish. Pooh. Chapter 2293. Seeing the arrow pierce through the demonic cultivator's chest and return to the man on the tree, the expressions of the people below couldn't help but change. They had seen this bow before. It was a devil cultivator's weapon. That devil cultivator was very powerful and was very active in this area. However, how did such a weapon end up in this man's hands? Did he kill that devil cultivator? No, that's impossible. That devil cultivator wasn't acting alone. Even if this man was a celestial sage expert, how could he deal with the original owner of this bow? Seeing the demonic cultivator fall to the ground with a thud, the surrounding people couldn't help but take a deep breath. No one stepped forward, and they only sent out their divine senses to investigate the situation. However, after a short while, the aura in front of them stopped as if the battle had never happened. The aura of the experts fighting in the air gradually dissipated and calmed down. "It's over." Their hearts trembled and they couldn't help but guess what had happened. Gu Xiang also knew that his master's side had ended. Hence, he glanced at the cultivators below and turned to rush towards Fingzhou. This person didn't even want the item on the devil cultivator's body. When they saw Gu Xiang turn and leave, the crowd was stunned. Then, a few figures rushed forward and snatched the Qinquan bag from the dead devil cultivator. Because they were snatching it, those people also moved and started to fight with their swords. However, the others didn't follow and quickly walked forward. However, when they arrived at the scene of the battle and saw the messy corpses on the ground and the destroyed trees around them, they couldn't help but be shocked. Was it that man in green who killed them? He had actually killed all 5 of them by himself. At this moment, waves of shock surged in the crowd's hearts. They were extremely shocked. At the same time, they were glad that they didn't attack the man in green. Otherwise, they would definitely be among the corpses lying here. Fengzhou, who had already left the area, walked towards the upstream of the water source. He washed his face there and sat down to rest. Gu Xiang followed him and saw that there were some small wounds on his body. He asked, "Master, do you want to bandage your wounds?" Fengzhou glanced at the bleeding wounds on his body and smiled indifferently. "No need, it's just some minor injuries. Fighting with those people had consumed a lot of Xian energy. Fortunately, she still had a lot of elixirs in her space. Now that she had taken one, the Xian energy in her body slowly recovered. As for these injuries, she only needed to use the healing ability of the Green Lotus to heal them. "Master, are we leaving just like that? Aren't you going to recruit some people?" He was a little confused and didn't know what he was planning. Feng Zhou smiled and looked in the direction of the Black Mountain City. "Yes, we want to recruit them, but we want them to come to us themselves." Gu Xiang was puzzled and looked in the direction his master was looking. Remembering that his master was looking in the direction of Black Mountain City, the spirit energy in his mind flashed and an inconceivable thought floated in his mind. "Master, you can't be eyeing that Black Mountain City, right? He couldn't be looking for an opportunity to destroy that Black Mountain City and occupy it as the king, right?" Chapter 2294. Along the way, anyone who was targeted by Master would not be able to escape in the end. Whether it was prey or demonic cultivators, or the magic weapons in their hands, as long as he wanted it, he would definitely get it. If Master had his eyes on that Black Mountain City, then it would not take long for Black Mountain City to become Master's possession. However, there are many cultivators in the Black Mountain City. How is Master going to take over the Black Mountain City with his own strength? At this moment, he was filled with anticipation and excitement. He felt that there were too many adventures and exciting things by Master's side. Fengzhou sat with her chin resting on her hand, an idea gradually forming in her mind. She took out some bottles and jars from her space and sat there to remix the medicine. Gu Xiang watched from the side, at the same time vigilantly paying attention to the surrounding movements. The 2 of them stayed here for an entire day. Even when the sky gradually darkened, Fengzhou still did not stop. Gu Xiang picked up some branches from the surroundings and lit a small fire beside his master to illuminate the area. Seeing his master's concentrated expression as he busied himself, he could not help but feel strange. Looking at Master's appearance, he looked like a doctor, but his fighting strength was so terrifying. It was really strange. Night quietly fell and Fengzhou finally stopped. She sniffed the medicine that she had successfully concocted and revealed a strange smile. "Master, what are you concocting this for?" Gu Xiang could not help but ask, pointing to the medicine bottle in his hand. "Good stuff." Fengzhou smiled mysteriously, stood up and said, "Let's go and get to work." Gu Xiang stood up in a daze and followed behind him, but he did not know what they were going to do. Until, after following him for another 2 days, they returned to the area of the beast forest. Fengzhou, dressed in green, stood in front of the beast forest. This time, she did not go to the underground cave, but walked in front of the beast forest and studied it for the entire morning. "Gu Xiang, I need your help." She looked at Gu Xiang, her eyes flashing. "Master, please speak." She looked at him and firmly said, "I have a way to change the array in this beast forest, but as for the barrier, I can't break it. However, I can open an opening and maintain it for about 2 hours, and this requires you to help me with your spiritual energy when I open the barrier." Gu Xiang was startled and said with a grave expression, "Master, you're a profound cultivator and I'm a spirit cultivator. Moreover, I'm a celestial sage cultivator. You won't be able to withstand my spirit chi. If I inject spirit chi into your body, I'm afraid you won't be able to withstand it and will be in danger. Hearing this, Fengzhou's voice, Master, I can control it. Master, I have my ways. Seeing Zhang Xian's confident expression, Gu Xiang said, all right then. Master, Gu to Fengzhou to Master. All right, wait a moment. I'll make some changes to the array here. As she spoke, she turned around and walked into the array that protected the entire beast forest. Gu Xiang's to her. Master to Master to Master to change to the array to make changes to the Master to the Beast Master. Was there anything that Master couldn't do? Chapter 2295. Gu Xiang, who was standing outside the beast forest, suddenly felt a surge of qi, as if a gust of wind had appeared in front of him. However, when he wanted to take a closer look, it had already disappeared and the surroundings had returned to normal. Not long later, he saw his master, who was dressed in green, walking out of the array. Seeing that he had come out safely, he grinned and quickly walked up to him. Master, you really moved this array. If anyone else entered, they would be lost inside, but he didn't need much time to move this large array. It was really inconceivable. After Fengzhou swallowed a pill, she secretly used her profound qi to activate the pill's effect. That large array was set up by the 4 great immortal emperors. Even if she had only moved it slightly, she had used up quite a bit of her qi. Fortunately, moving the array was only a matter of a moment and did not alarm the 4 great immortal emperors. However, she knew that this was only a matter of time. Even if she moved the array without alarming the 4 great immortal emperors guarding the 4 corners of the sky, opening the enchantment could also avoid their divine sense. However, when she wanted to break the entire floating array in the future, she would definitely alarm the 4 great immortal emperors. Let's go in. Fengzhou said to him and led him into the beast forest from the other side of the underground passage. Not far from here, a group of people was heading towards the beast forest. The devil cultivator at the front seemed to have sensed something and stopped in his tracks. He looked at his surroundings with a strange expression on his face. What's wrong? Is there a problem? The few devil cultivators behind him asked as they looked around but did not sense anything amiss. Be careful, why did I feel like there was a gust of air just now? The leader of the devil cultivators said as he felt strange in his heart. He turned around and said to the rest of the team, we came out this time to enter the beast forest to hunt some prey before returning. Everyone, be alert. Otherwise, we'll be crying for help when we get inside. A few of the cultivators laughed out loud. Who would be so cowardly as to cry for help? Our team's battle power is much stronger than the other teams. Even if there is, it would be the other teams crying for help. Hearing this, everyone laughed. One of them said, strange, the other 2 teams came out at the same time as us. Why don't I see them? If he's not in front of us, then he's behind us. I reckon he's not far away. Another demonic cultivator said. All right, stop yelling, let's go. We haven't eaten meat for a few days. This time, we must bring some back. The devil cultivator in the lead said as he strode forward. The crowd behind him also followed. However, Fengzhou, who had entered the beast forest, handed a pair of cloud-chasing boots to Gu Xiang and instructed, when the time comes, lure the ferocious beasts to the edge of the boundary. Remember, when the time comes, use these cloud-chasing boots to run. You don't have to fight with the ferocious beasts, just run and let them chase after you. After hearing Fengzhou's plan, Gu Xiang's forehead couldn't help but sweat. Master, is this method really feasible? It takes about 2 days to reach the Black Mountain Forest from here. If we want to lure all those ferocious beasts there, it seems a little. Chapter 2296. Smelling the fragrance of the medicine, he felt that it was quite fragrant. However, he did not know what this medicine was used for. Thus, he asked, Master, can this medicine attract the ferocious beasts? What medicine is this? Is it really so powerful? Fengzhou's hand paused, and an inexplicable smile appeared on her face. She said slowly, "This medicine is applied on your body. It can last for 2 to 3 days, and the smell will not disappear. It will only disappear after 2 to 3 days." She paused, and sprinkled some of the remaining medicine on her sleeve. She continued, "As for the effect of this medicine, it can make the ferocious beasts excited after smelling the smell. They will lose their minds and chase after the smell. That's why I told you to run faster." Gu Xiang was dumbstruck, and his whole body stiffened. The burly man looked at Fengjiu in astonishment and disbelief. Excited? "Master, this excitement is not what I thought it meant, right?" "No, it means what you thought it meant," Fengjiu said with a smile. This smell could make the male ferocious beasts excited. Moreover, the smell could be smelled even from a few hundred meters away. The ferocious beasts were more male than female. Now that they were stimulated by her medicine, one could imagine the crazy scene that would follow. Hearing this, Gu Xiang inexplicably shivered. He looked at his master casually sprinkling the medicine on his own body, and his eyes widened. Master, you are too cruel. Do you not intend to leave us a way out? What if we are caught?" At this moment, he had an inexplicable urge to cry. Why was his master so crazy? He did not dare to imagine what would happen if they attracted a large group of ferocious beasts and were caught. So, "Didn't I give you a pair of chasing clouds boots? But you have to run as fast as you can. If you are too slow, I don't want to imagine the scene." She smiled like a cunning fox, but it was hard to get angry. After all, he had also sprinkled the medicine on himself. What else could he do? "All right, let's go. Remember, lead me in the direction of Black Mountain City, but more importantly, remember to use your spiritual energy to help me open the barrier. Otherwise, both of us will be trapped here." She chuckled and led him into the depths of the forest. After the time it took for a stick of incense to burn, there were faint vibrations in the forest. It seemed like there was a commotion. For a moment, the roars of ferocious beasts could be heard from all over the beast forest. When the ferocious beasts in the forest smelled the scent in the air, their eyes turned red for some reason. They all fell into a frenzy of excitement. Roar! 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 The roars of the ferocious beasts rang out from all over the beast forest. The sounds of the beasts running were like streams flowing down from the mountains, gradually gathering together to form a large stream flowing into the sea. The aura gradually grew from weak to strong, and the sounds also grew from less to more. It was as if 10,000 beasts were rushing over, toppling the mountains and overturning the seas, causing the earth to shake and the mountains to shake. Chapter 2297. Roar! Pang, pang, ping. Behind Gu Xiang, a group of about 100 ferocious beasts were running on all fours, roaring and growling as they chased after Gu Xiang. Gu Xiang only turned his head to take a look, but his heart was already in his throat. His entire body was tense, and even his breathing became a little rough. "Gu Xiang! Hurry up!" Faintly, a voice came from the front. When he heard this voice, Gu Xiang's heart trembled. He quickly steadied his mind and activated the cloud-chasing boots on his feet before instantly rushing forward. At the same time, he roared at the sky, "Clan leader! Master is really risking his life more than playing with his life." His voice was mournful with extreme fear. When he thought of being caught by the group of ferocious beasts, he would not be torn to pieces, but that scene flashed through his mind, causing him to scream in fear. His figure sped up again like a shadow, and in just a breath's time, the distance between him and the large group of fierce beasts that were following closely behind him was pulled apart. At the boundary, Fengjiu shook off the group of ferocious beasts and waited there. Seeing that Gu Xiang had not arrived, he shouted again, "Gu Xiang! Hurry up! Hurry up!" This was really a race against time. If they could not open a hole in the boundary before the group of ferocious beasts caught up, they would really be in trouble. "Ah! Master, Master, I'm coming. Hurry, hurry up and open the boundary." Gu Xiang ran toward Fingzhou like a whirlwind. At the same time, he gathered the spiritual power in his body into his palm. "You came at the right time." Fingzhou's eyes lit up. He immediately turned around and stood facing the boundary in front of him. Qi surged in his hands, and at the same time, a complicated mark was formed in his hands. At this moment, Gu Xiang, who came behind Fingzhou and transferred his spiritual power to him. The spiritual power slowly flowed into Fingzhou's body. After passing through her body, it emerged from her hands. A visible spiritual power surged with the boundary in her hands, and a Xianling formation appeared under her feet. At this moment, Gu Xiang did not notice that he was transferring his spiritual power into Fingzhou's body while anxiously and nervously looking behind him. Hearing the sound of the group of ferocious beasts getting closer and closer, and seeing the dust and sand surging over, his forehead could not help sweating. "Master, is the boundary about to be opened? Those ferocious beasts are catching up." At this moment, Fingzhou's forehead was sweating. She was resisting the pressure of the 4 great immortal emperors to open a hole in the boundary. In addition to consuming spiritual power, qi, and mental power, she was lucky, she had the protection of the ancient mythical beast. "Open for me!" she shouted, and the spiritual power in her hands instantly attacked. The formation under her feet and the mark in her hands formed a stream of air, and fiercely rushed forward. The stream of air was like a pair of big hands tearing a hole in the boundary. The hole gradually became bigger, and it was torn until it was 3 meters wide. Master Gu Xiang, who had been paying attention to the movement behind him, saw the large group of ferocious beasts roaring and rushing over. Those blood-red eyes stared at him, and he was shocked. "What, master? Quickly run." Chapter 2298. Behind them, a series of frantic running sounds could be heard. The group of fierce beasts were rushing towards the opening in the barrier, chasing after Fingzhou, Gu Xiang, and Hades. In front, Fingzhou let go of Gu Xiang and shouted at him, "Remember. Run towards Black Mountain City. Let those fierce beasts follow closely, don't shake them off." With that, she separated from him and rushed to the other side. At the same time, she took off the rainbow glass feather from her waist and threw it forward. Then, she jumped up as well. Seeing that half of the large group of ferocious beasts behind him had been lured away by his master, Gu Xiang lightly exhaled. He looked back and slowly adjusted his state of mind. After stabilizing his breath and suppressing the panic in his heart, he used the cloud-chasing boots to chase after the ferocious beasts behind him. The roars of the ominous beasts resounded behind him, echoing in the forest. The dust and smoke that were stirred up by the ominous beasts filled the air. The trees that were destroyed by the ominous beasts fell in a disorderly manner, and the weeds that were half the height of a person were trampled flat. Fengzhou sat on the feather and let out a sigh of relief. He looked back at the number of fierce beasts below. There are hundreds of fierce beasts here alone. What a surprise! She was a little surprised. She didn't expect that after the 2 of them went around the beast forest, so many fierce beasts would follow them out. She had hundreds of fierce beasts here. Even if Gu Xiang only had a few dozen, this number would be enough to help them destroy Black Mountain City. Thinking about how they lured these fierce beasts to charge into Black Mountain City, Fengzhou couldn't help but smile. "I'm really looking forward to it." Not far from here, they felt the ground shaking and heard the fierce beasts' roars echoing in the forest. A group of demonic cultivators couldn't help but stop in shock. What's going on? This commotion, could it be a beast tide? Go. You go ahead and investigate. The leading demonic cultivator pointed, indicating for another demonic cultivator to go forward and scout the situation. The demonic cultivator who was pointed at could only bite the bullet and continue forward, following the voice to search. However, when he walked about 100 meters, he suddenly saw a man in green sitting on a feather that was emitting a 7-colored light. The man was looking at him strangely, and his eyes had a trace of sympathy that made him feel strange. "Hey! What's going on over there?" Suppressing the uneasiness, he asked the man in green sitting on the feather. "Aw. Don't you know?" Fengjiu lightly flew over his head and gradually disappeared into the distance. He kindly pointed behind the demonic cultivator and said, "Look over there and you'll know." The demonic cultivator was taken aback. As he heard the beast roars echoing in the forest become clearer and clearer, he felt the ground tremble even more violently. His heart trembled and he turned around to look. His eyes widened in shock. Beast tide. As far as the eye could see, all he saw was a large group of over 100 ferocious beasts charging out of the forest. Some of the ferocious beasts in front of him rammed into the trees and actually broke the trees that were blocking the way. Seeing the branches snap and fall, seeing the weeds being flattened, and seeing the group of red-eyed ferocious beasts charging in front of him, he cried out in alarm and broke into a run. "The beast tide is here. Run! Run!" Chapter 2299. When the group of demonic cultivators nearby heard the sound, they could not hear it clearly. The leader looked at the crowd behind him and asked, "Did you hear what he was shouting?" "I can't hear it clearly. The beasts in this forest are too noisy," a demonic cultivator said as he narrowed his eyes and stared at his surroundings. With a serious expression, he said, "Why do I feel that something is wrong with this forest today? Don't you feel that this area is filled with a dangerous aura? It's very unsettling, isn't it? Is it very unsettling?" A voice suddenly rang out. One of the demonic cultivators replied, The beasts in this forest are indeed unsettling. However, there is no beast tide in this place. Those ferocious beasts are all trapped in the beast forest. There are only a few of them in places like this, so they can't form a beast tide." "That's right. If we didn't know that there would be no beast tide here, we would have retreated long ago." Another demonic cultivator chimed in. Everyone gathered together and discussed. Suddenly, a demonic cultivator caught a glimpse of a green-robed man sitting on a rainbow-colored feather and was startled. "Ah! Who are you?" The demonic cultivators instantly turned around, only to see the green-robed figure sitting on the feather lightly floating over their heads. In the span of a breath, he was already 100 meters away. "Don't worry, I'm just an idle person. You can continue chatting. You won't pay attention to me. I just happened to pass by here." Fengjiu waved his hand without even turning his head. His voice drifted over from 100 meters away, but it could not be heard clearly amidst the chaotic beasts in the forest. "Ah! Run! Quickly!" The demonic cultivator who had gone to scout the way ran over. However, before he could finish speaking, a level 9 clouded leopard pounced on him and pressed him to the ground. In an instant, the demonic cultivator's blood-curdling screams rang out. When the group of demonic cultivators saw the scene not too far away, their faces were filled with shock. Especially when they saw the clouded leopard pressing down on the demonic cultivator after pouncing on him and its crazed blood-red eyes, they were so frightened that their faces turned pale and cold sweat broke out on their foreheads. Damn it! A horrified curse rang out. The devil cultivator in the lead was the first to react. He broke into a run and chased after Fengjiu. "Ah! Run!" The others cried out in alarm when they saw the group of ferocious beasts rushing over. Some of the faster ones ran away, while some of the slower ones were pushed down. The chaotic scene and the shrill cries of fear deeply stimulated the group of demonic cultivators, causing their minds to tremble. They were unable to calm down for a long time. However, when they tried to catch up to the green-robed man sitting on the feather, they suddenly realized that the spiritual energy in their bodies seemed to be gradually disappearing, and their running speed also slowed down. No! How could this be? How could this be? Panicked and terrified cries rang out, and the demonic cultivators' expressions changed drastically. However, even if they didn't want to admit it, they still slowed down. Without the support of spiritual energy, they could only run on their 2 legs. A human's 2 legs didn't have the assistance of spiritual power to fly, so how could they be faster than a 4-legged ferocious beast? Chapter 2300. She originally wanted to clear out all the demonic cultivators here. Now that she had encountered these people, how could she let them go? Moreover, she didn't need to do anything. The ferocious beasts chasing behind her would take care of those demonic cultivators for her. As expected, not long after, she heard the demonic cultivators' shocked cries and screams. Hundreds of ferocious beasts chased after Fingzhou and Gu Xiang for a full 2 days and 1 night. It could be said that the commotion caused by this group of ferocious beasts had alarmed the 8 factions here, and they all sent people to investigate. Finally, on this day, Fingzhou's figure flashed like the wind, and she finally arrived at the territory of Black Mountain City. Along the way, she sometimes used the flying device as a means of transportation, and sometimes on the ground. She didn't stop for a moment along the way. Even if she didn't fight, she still used up a lot of energy. Fortunately, she didn't have much other things, but she had the most pills. After swallowing a pill, light surged in her eyes. This day has finally come. From this moment onwards, from this Black Mountain City, she would take this floating land into her pocket. She would make this place hers. Roar! The roars of hundreds of beasts sounded behind her, and a strong pressure and air current surged, triggering an earth-shaking momentum. After chasing for a full 2 days and 1 night, the medicinal effect in their bodies gradually reached its peak, and their red eyes shot out crazily. When the demonic cultivators and cultivators in Black Mountain City heard the beasts' roars, they couldn't help but be surprised and rushed out. Strange, why are there beasts' roars in this area? It sounds like there are quite a lot of them. That's right. It doesn't sound like some people's contracted beasts, but more like a herd of beasts. How is that possible? If there were beasts here, they would have been killed by the rogue cultivators outside or our people. How could there be a herd of beasts? But this sound really sounds like a herd of beasts. Why don't we send someone out to take a look? Ah! Look, Master is here. It seems that Master has also heard the commotion outside. The people who spoke saw a middle-aged demonic cultivator in a black robe who was escorted by several demonic cultivators. They all stood orderly and bowed to him. Master! Voices rang out from the mouths of the crowd. Among the roughly 200 cultivators, there were devil cultivators and heretic cultivators. The strength of these 200 cultivators was a mix of high and low. The only thing they had in common was that they had submitted to the devil cultivator of Black Mountain City and recognized him as their master. What's going on outside? Has anyone gone to investigate? He was a devil cultivator with the strength of an immortal venerable. A powerful aura emanated from his body. The killing intent was so strong that the surrounding cultivators didn't dare to look at him directly. Master, we were just discussing this matter and were about to send someone to investigate. A demonic cultivator replied. The immortal venerable narrowed his eyes and stared at the surging pressure in the sky. A trace of solemnity flashed across his sinister eyes. It seems like it's a beast tide. But why would there be a beast tide in this place? Go. Pass down the order to close the city gates. Open the barrier. No entry or exit. We'll check it out after the beast tide has passed. He instructed in a deep voice, instantly giving the order. Chapter 2301. Therefore, under the command of the demonic cultivator, the cultivators in the city quickly dispersed. Some went to open the great city barrier array, some closed the city gate, and some went to the top of the city tower to see what was going on. The people on the city tower only saw a sandstorm from afar, but they couldn't see what was in the sandstorm. They only knew that there seemed to be something in the sandstorm that was heading straight for their black mountain city, causing the dust on the ground to fill the air. At the same time, there was another sandstorm that was rolling in this direction, and there seemed to be the roars of beasts coming from the other side. The demonic cultivator Immortal Venerable, who also came to the top of the city tower, stared at one of the sandstorms with gloomy eyes. The Immortal Venerable scanned with his divine sense, and his voice couldn't help but become gloomy. Is it a human? He scanned the other side and released his divine sense. He also saw the figure of a middle-aged man in the sandstorm. When he scanned behind the two people, his face couldn't help but change slightly. Damn it! A sinister aura instantly exuded from his body. His hand, which was originally behind his back, gripped the stone pillar of the city tower. His gaze was sinister as he stared at the large cloud of dust behind him. He saw that there were hundreds of fierce beasts running in every cloud of dust. What made him feel incredulous was that these fierce beasts were all of high ranks. Among them, there were even 2 divine beast-level fierce beasts. The great city barrier array was opened at this moment, and a powerful spiritual aura that was visible to the naked eye instantly protected the entire Black Mountain city. Seeing that the great city barrier array was activated, the Immortal Venerable finally let out a sigh of relief. He stared gloomily at the 2 people coming over. Humph! You reckless fool! He wanted to see how the 2 people would be torn to pieces by the more than 200 fierce beasts behind them when there was no way out. Master! Gu Xiang sped up and caught up with Fingzhou, shouting, Master, the great city barrier array in front of us has been activated, what should we do? Fingzhou narrowed his eyes and stared at the Immortal Venerable level devil cultivator on the city gate tower, and revealed a strange smile. I can break the formations and barriers of the 4 immortal emperors, why would I worry about not being able to break this little protective formation? Hearing this, Gu Xiang was delighted and hurriedly asked, Master, do you still need me to transfer more spiritual power? No need. With a flash of her body, she gradually withdrew her aura and stopped in front of the city gate. She lifted her eyes to look at the demonic cultivator on the city gate tower and revealed a strange smile. Seeing the strange smile on the green-clothed man's face, the demonic venerable immortal cultivator on the city tower frowned and felt a little uneasy. Therefore, a voice containing the pressure of an immortal venerable mixed with a trace of gloominess and killing intent came from the city tower and attacked Fingzhou. Who are you? What are you doing here? He used the pressure of an immortal venerable. If it was an ordinary cultivator, they would not be able to remain standing under his pressure. However, when he saw that the green-clothed man was not afraid of his pressure at all, his heart could not help but tremble. What was this person's cultivation? How could he not be afraid of his immortal venerable pressure? Chapter 2302. One of the demonic cultivators saw Fingzhou's intention and was so shocked that he stuttered, Master, this person wants to break our great city barrier array. Break the array. Humph. He has to be able to break it first. The demonic cultivator coldly snorted. Although he said that he didn't think much of it, his malicious gaze was fixed on Fingzhou. This person is strange. Can he break the great city barrier array? He was really not confident. At this moment, there was a loud bang, followed by a series of exclamations. All the cultivators' expressions changed drastically. Not good. The great city barrier array was broken by him. The people on the city gate tower were in chaos. They saw a flame suddenly surge up from below, and at the same time, the flame covered the aura of spiritual energy visible to the naked eye. Then, for some unknown reason, there was a loud bang, and the city gate was destroyed just like that. Gu Xiang. Here. Gu Xiang's eyes were filled with excitement, and he quickly stepped forward. Break the city gate. Fengjiu ordered in a deep voice. Yes. Immediately, Gu Xiang's spiritual aura surged, and a sharp sword appeared in his hand. His spiritual aura spread out and instantly became several times bigger. With a loud shout, he raised the sword and slashed forward. The city gate rumbled, and the entire city gate was destroyed in an instant. Fengjiu turned around and glanced at the ferocious beasts that were already 100 meters away, then glanced at the terrified demonic cultivators on the city wall. In the next moment, she flew into the city and shouted in a low voice, "Act according to the plan." Everyone on the city tower was stunned and couldn't react for a long time. It was only when they saw the 200+ ferocious beasts that they suddenly woke up. Quick! Stop them! Those two! Kill those two! Angry voices sounded in the city. Then, the 200+ ferocious beasts rushed into the city gate, and the ferocious beasts pounced on and bit anyone they saw. The roars of the beasts, cries of alarm, and sounds of battle rang out chaotically in the city. At this moment, Fengjiu rose into the air and sprinkled medicinal liquid on the demonic cultivators below. At the same time, she scattered medicinal powder between her fingers with the wind. Damn it! Seeing Fengjiu's actions, the demonic cultivator who set up a defensive barrier stared at Fengjiu with bloodthirsty eyes. How dare you destroy my city tower? I want you to die without a burial place. The powerful pressure of an immortal venerable mixed with bloodthirsty killing intent spread out at this moment. When he saw the chaotic scene below, he no longer cared about whether his subordinates could withstand his pressure. At this moment, there was only one thought in his mind, and that was to grind the bones of this green-clothed man who had appeared out of nowhere and scatter his ashes. Fengjiu threw down the medicinal bottle in her hand. At the same time, she sprinkled something on herself. With a move of her hand, the red armillary sash appeared in her hand. Under the urging of her dark force, it turned into a sharp blade. It's time for your city tower to change owners. A cold and arrogant voice came out of her mouth. Her profound force aura also spread out at this moment, preparing to fight with this immortal supremacy devil cultivator. At the same time, she also wanted to use this opportunity to see if she could break through the seal of spiritual energy in her body. Ha 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 ha. Arrogant brat. You overestimate yourself. Chapter 2303. The overwhelming killing intent swept over with a destructive aura. The pressure of an immortal venerable expert and the airflow were as sharp as blades. She couldn't even see his figure moving. She could only see the airflow rushing over. In an instant, the black shadow was right in front of her. A pair of hands suddenly reached out to grab her throat. She immediately tied them up with the chaotic sky silk in her hand and retreated at the same time. However, the opponent's leg kicked at her with a wind blade. The speed was so fast that she almost couldn't react to it. Bang! Bang! Whoosh! The two of them fought in midair. Below them, the fierce beasts and the devil cultivators were engaged in a chaotic battle. Roars and sounds of battle were unceasing. Screams and miserable cries could be heard from time to time. The entire Black Mountain City was in a state of chaos. Outside the Black Mountain City, some of the cultivators who followed the hundreds of beasts to investigate the situation couldn't help but suck in a breath of cold air when they saw the scene in the Black Mountain City. Hiss! That youth really doesn't want to live anymore. A cultivator exclaimed. He recognized that the green-clothed man was the youth that they couldn't see through. At this moment, they were even more shocked when they saw that he was actually able to fight with the Black Mountain City Lord from afar. The Black Mountain City Lord was an immortal venerable expert. That youth was actually able to fight with him. It could be seen that his strength was really strong. It was no wonder that the two devil cultivators asked him to go with them to the beast forest. In the end, he was the only one who came back. Seeing the scene of him fighting with the immortal venerable devil cultivator, they finally knew why he was able to eliminate 4 or 5 devil cultivators by himself. In the city, several devil cultivators were chasing after Gu Xiang. While Gu Xiang was fighting with them, he was also using the fierce beasts to avoid their attacks. Even so, he still suffered quite a number of injuries. However, just as a devil cultivator was about to launch a sneak attack on him from behind, a fierce beast suddenly pounced on him and dragged him down, tearing him into pieces. A strong smell of blood pervaded the city. Broken limbs were scattered all over the ground. There were fierce beasts and devil cultivators. All that could be seen was a dazzling bright red. In the air, after being unable to kill the azure-robed man for a long time, the demonic cultivator couldn't help but look at him. His gloomy voice filled with confusion came from his mouth. "You are only a mere black tortoise god. How did you not lose for a long time?" Fengzhou's hand was wrapped around the chaotic sky silk. She stared at him and said, "Didn't you only use 50% of your strength to fight me? You want to kill me with just 50% of your strength? You're underestimating me." As soon as she finished speaking, the chaotic sky silk in her hand flew out with a swish. This time, she had switched from defense to offense and started to counterattack. Hearing this, the demonic cultivator narrowed his eyes. Very good. The spiritual energy in his body instantly surged. His 5 fingers formed a claw and grabbed at the air. A stream of air surged in his claw and flew out with a whoosh. Fengzhou used the red armillary sash to block his attack, but the profound energy aura on the red armillary sash was knocked away because of this. The red armillary sash, which was originally as sharp as a sword, instantly softened and lightly floated back into her hand. Chapter 2304. Bang! With a loud bang, she was sent flying. She let out a muffled groan, and the blood in her body rushed to her throat. She felt a salty taste in her mouth, and a trace of blood seeped out. The pain from the impact and the wound that was torn open by the air current caused her to frown. After she stabilized her body, she raised her hand to wipe the blood from the corner of her mouth. Then, she heard the demonic cultivator's voice. "Brat, I'll let you see how powerful this sovereign is." As soon as the demonic cultivator's voice rang out, his figure instantly split into 2. The 2 figures surrounded Fengzhou from the front and the back and attacked at the same time. The same move, the same aura, and the same person's strength. It was impossible to tell which one was fake. Which one was real. In a moment of carelessness, Fengzhou was hit with a palm, and he spat out a mouthful of blood. When Gu Xiang saw this scene, he couldn't help but exclaim, "Master." Fengzhou glanced down and saw that he was covered in injuries. He said, "Take care of yourself." As soon as he said that, he felt a strong air current attack again. An overwhelming murderous intent surged. The opponent's air current turned into a rope at a speed faster than one could cover one's ears, and tightly tied her up. She couldn't move at all. "Ha ha 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 ha. Brat, how is it?" The demonic cultivator narrowed his eyes and stared at Fengzhou. Seeing that he was tied up by his spirit power rope, he was not in a hurry to attack. Instead, he stopped and looked at the young man who was like a lamb waiting to be slaughtered. Fengzhou's eyes flashed. He glanced at his surroundings. She was surrounded by the demonic cultivator's immortal supremacy pressure. A visible air current formed around her and surrounded her. She looked down and saw that the halo-like spirit power rope was gradually tightening around her body, as if it was going to crush her bones. She tried to break free, but she couldn't. Just now, he clearly could have avoided it, but he just had to play along and get tied up. Thinking of what might happen next, he inexplicably sighed in his heart. She had been looking for an opportunity to break through the seal on the spiritual energy in her body, and this required her to unleash all of her potential in the face of life and death. Right now, this opportunity was just right. However, it was not up to her to stimulate the potential in her body. She had to face the threat of death before her body's functions could erupt at that moment. It seemed that she would have to suffer a little. "Brat, how is it? Aren't you very capable? How could he be captured so easily?" The demonic cultivator raised his hand and swung his blade at Fengjiu. A bloody gash appeared on Fengjiu's abdomen when the blade landed. Hiss. It really hurt. She took a deep breath in her heart. Although the cut was not deep, it was really painful. How long had it been since she had suffered such an injury? He was really asking for it. "Don't worry, I won't take your life with one strike. You destroyed my town and caused my subordinates to suffer heavy losses. I will definitely let you have a taste of my methods." As he spoke, he raised his hand and several air currents flew out. In a short while, Fengjiu was covered in cuts and bruises. Hiss. Ah. Chapter 2305. However, when she felt the movement in her dantian, her eyes flashed. The flow of dark force seemed to be draining away, but a flow of dark force was gradually forming in her dantian. It was the flow of dark force, which had merged with the green lotus's aura. It was gradually expanding towards the seal that sealed her spiritual energy, trying to break the seal bit by bit. "Do you feel pain now? That's not enough. If you provoke me, I'll let you have a taste of the pain of being skinned alive." The demonic cultivator's sinister voice rang out. With a move of his hands, he gathered the surrounding flow of dark force towards Fengjiu. The flow of dark force whistled and slashed across Fengjiu's body like sharp knives. Ah! Fengjiu raised her head and screamed as she endured the pain of countless blades slicing across her body. Suddenly, she felt all the strength in her body rushing towards the seal. The spiritual energy that was originally sealed suddenly gushed out like a broken dam. Bang! Boom! A powerful flow of dark force suddenly rippled out in the air. The ancient divine beast's coercion was also released at this moment. The dark force was visible to the naked eye as it surged like waves and slammed into the surroundings. The powerful impact instantly broke free of the dark force that bound her body. Her body was also lifted into the air because she had broken free from the restraints. Her dark force was stained with blood and her body was covered with wounds. However, at this moment, her peak immortal sage stage coercion had merged with the ancient divine beast's coercion, forming a powerful and intimidating aura. Fengjiu lowered her head and looked at her tattered dark force clothes. Her eyes moved slightly, and she tore off her dark force clothes and threw them down. At the same time, she took out a dazzling red robe from the space and put it on, covering the wounds on her body. She was covered in blood. However, the dazzling red robe made her look even more outstanding, especially the powerful aura that radiated from between her brows. It was sharp and unyielding, confident and unrestrained. "It's all thanks to you. Otherwise, I don't know when my seal would have been undone." Her red lips parted slightly as her voice was unhurried. However, it was clearly transmitted into the devil cultivator's ears. The demonic cultivator's heart shook when he saw the young man who seemed to have become a different person. His eyes widened as he stared at the young man. The aura of an ancient god beast was so clear and powerful. His contract beast must be an ancient god beast. Previously, when they exchanged blows, he only felt that this young man was arrogant and wanton. Now that he looked at him, the young man's aura suddenly changed, becoming extremely sharp and intimidating. The domineering aura that was formed by the heavens naturally spread out from his body, causing him to involuntarily be shocked. A mere young man actually had such an aura. Who was this person exactly? How did he end up in such a place? Needless to say, the young man in front of him whose aura had suddenly changed had an extremely strong impact on him. He originally thought that the young man would definitely die, but who would have thought that the young man actually had the profound spiritual body? Previously, he had only used his profound energy aura to exchange blows with him. Now that he had released his spiritual energy aura, the aura of a ruler inexplicably caused him to feel apprehensive. Profound spiritual body. He stared at the young man, his eyes flashing with excitement as if he had found a prey. I really didn't expect that I would be able to encounter a profound spiritual body in such a place. I'm really glad that I didn't kill you with a single blow. Otherwise, it would really be a pity.